Moonlit maze at Petra, stranded. I could feel the Sikh's sandstone walls closing in as thunder rolled overhead, a flash flood imminent with no escape. In the dead of night, my lantern shattered on jagged rock, casting dancing shadows across the canyon walls. A distant roar grew as torrents funneled through hidden channels. Each heartbeat echoed like thunder, the narrow gorge twisting into a maze of jagged turns cloaked in darkness and fear. I had arrived at Petra's visitor center in Wadi Musa just hours earlier, eager for a midnight photo shoot of Khazneh lit by moonlight. My guide, Salim, a weathered Bedouin tracker, had warned me of sudden desert storms and the Syku's hidden perils, mentioning phantom lanterns that lure the unwary into side alcoves. He spoke of Nabatean water channels carved beneath the gorge, ingenious engineering that could become deadly conduits in a flash flood. Armed with my tripod, camera, and a single kerosene lantern, I signed the permit at the ranger station and stepped into the yawning gorge, the cool desert breeze carrying whispers of ancient secrets. I glanced at Salim's stern face, the faint glow of his campfire marking the only other light for miles around. The stakes were clear: capture the perfect shot, or risk becoming just another lost traveler in Petra's labyrinth. Salim led me into the mouth of the Sikh at Basin Springs just after midnight. A vaulted basalt arch soared overhead, its dark silhouette etched against the ghostly moon. My footsteps crunched on coarse gravel, each echo reverberating between walls that rose like titanic sentinels. The temperature had already dipped to about 15 degrees Celsius, and even my heavy jacket did little to ward off the desert chill. In the beam of Salim's lantern, I caught glimpses of ancient chisel marks, testifying to Nabatean hands that shaped this canyon centuries ago. A sense of awe mixed with dread as we ventured deeper into the gorge's heart. As we pressed on, the walls narrowed to a mere 3 meters apart, their surfaces streaked in bands of pink, crimson, and ochre. Faint runnels carved by seasonal rains snaked along the sandstone, hinting at subterranean water channels engineered by Nabatean builders. Salim paused beside one such indentation, tracing its edge with a slender finger.
When flash floods come,
He murmured.
this whole corridor becomes a deadly sluice.
I peered into shadowed alcoves, half expecting to spot phantom lanterns from his stories. Every texture felt ancient. Every grain of sand carried 100 forgotten footsteps. My heart thumped as we navigated the canyon's twists, the air growing thicker with anticipation. I raised my camera, adjusting the aperture to capture the lunar glow against rust-red walls. With each click, a shard of history froze in pixel form. Nabatean inscriptions, the serpentine curve of the gorge, the silvery sheen of dust. My tripod feet sank into soft sand as I crouched for a low-angle shot of concealed niches where Bedouin traders once stored precious water amphorae. Salim watched in silence, his weathered face half illuminated as embers danced in his lantern. The canyon had a heartbeat of its own, the faint drip of condensation from overhead shelves that collected morning dew. I sensed that these rocks had witnessed empires rise and fall, their secrets buried beneath layers of ochre sediment. Every turn revealed a new marvel. Sculpted alcoves where carved reliefs once depicted Nabatean horses, narrow ledges that seemed unsuited to human passage, and ancient cistern openings guarded by iron grates. I stepped carefully, mindful of loose stone underfoot. One misstep could send me sprawling against the canyon wall. Overhead, the sky narrowed to a thin ribbon of star-spangled black, keeping us suspended in a halo of silence. Though the moon bathed the walls in soft light, pockets of darkness swallowed our silhouettes. Salim's lantern beam cut a crescent across the floor, illuminating swirling sand devils that rose and fell like tiny desert specters. By the time we reached the central cleft, where the treasury should have loomed beyond a final bend, I realized how deceptively long the essek was. My watch ticked past 2 a.m., and fatigue tugged at my limbs. Salim stopped abruptly, whispering that we must press on before the predicted storm struck. The canyon floor began to slope downward, channels carved so smoothly it felt like walking on glass. Each breath tasted of sandstone dust and desert air, while my pulse throbbed in time with distant, muffled thunder. We took a brief rest against a broad quartz-flecked wall, the only patch of stillness before the gorge's final trials unfolded. Salim checked his map, a simple sketch etched on parchment, and motioned me onward. The canyon's final corridor beckoned, draped in velvet shadows pierced only by our faint lantern glow. Ahead, the promise of the treasury silhouette lingered beyond darkness. Just past dawn's false promise, dark clouds gathered overhead and an eerie stillness fell over the seek. A distant rumble made the walls vibrate, first like a soft drumbeat, then escalating into a low roar. Salim halted, eyes narrowing as he scanned the narrow corridor. The wind gusted through fissures above, scattering grains of sand like spectral confetti. I glanced at the sky framed between the canyon walls. What had felt like a crystalline moonlit night now roiled with threatening thunderheads. Every second felt elongated, the world reduced to the hum of electricity in the air and our synchronized breaths.
We must hurry. Water will follow,
He said, voice crisp as chilly wind tearing through the canyon. At first, it was a subtle trickle, threads of silvery water that snaked through carved channels underfoot, whispering of distant storms. I thought it was mere condensation until Salim's boots splashed in a growing puddle. Within seconds, the trickle swelled into a rushing current. Water roaring like a freight train bounced between stone walls. The canyon floor trembled under the force, and sand devils vanished under swirling eddies. Salim shouted warnings as he forged ahead, the lantern beam quivering in his hand. I raised my camera instinctively, but the lens fogged instantly. Each step required care. The path had become a liquid mirror, reflecting the jagged walls in shimmering distortion that made every angle disorienting. As we pressed forward, Salim's warnings merged with the pounding water. In my haste, I misjudged a slick patch and my foot slid, sending me sprawling against a rock ledge. The lantern slipped from Salim's grasp, tumbling forward and smashing against sandstone. Flames extinguished in an instant. Darkness swallowed us, the water's edge glowing only where my soaked boots caught moonlight. Salim's voice cut through the gloom, but I couldn't pinpoint his direction. Panic fluttered in my chest as I fumbled for my spare headlamp, fumbling with cold fingers on camera buttons. The roar of the flood drowned out my heartbeat, and I realized the guide was no longer by my side. My heart pounded as I stumbled forward, water surging to mid-calf, each step a battle against the current. I shouted Salim's name, voice swallowed by the chaos. The canyon wall, slick with water and sand, offered no handholds. My flashlight beam danced frantically, illuminating droplets that clung to recessed carvings. I tried to retrace our path, but the swirling water erased my footprints within seconds. The canyon's twists masked all landmarks. I felt utterly alone in a living labyrinth. The roar of water crescendoed, and I felt the ground shift beneath me as the torrent carved new channels. I clung to a jutting ledge, breath ragged, palms slick. Cold water seeped through my clothes, turning goosebumps into ice needles along my spine. Then the ledge crumbled beneath my weight, and I plunged into a hidden alcove just as a wave of water poured over the rocks. Darkness enveloped me, the world reduced to the pounding rush and my ragged breaths. My shoulder slammed against a stone outcrop with bone-jarring force. Pain seared through my torso. In that subterranean niche, water pooled ankle-deep, bringing the chill of a subterranean spring. I pressed my back against the wall, limbs trembling, as shards of sandstone littered the ground. Above, the Sykes roof dripped ferociously, each drop sounding like a hammer strike. I was trapped, bruised, and drenched, yet alive. For several minutes, I lay still, willing my racing heart to slow against the relentless pulse of the flood above. I tested my shoulder. Sharp agony flared at each breath, but panic was a poorer ally than resolve. I forced myself upright, scanning for an exit. The alcove narrowed into a crevice too tight to navigate fully, but I sensed a faint draft above, a shaft leading to the canyon floor. Bracing my foot against a protruding stone, I heaved upward, scraping skin along rough edges. My hands trembled, but grit and desperation carried me toward a sliver of moonlight filtering through the crack. Each movement was agony, yet hope burned brighter than any pain. With claws of determination, I hauled myself through the narrow breach. My jacket snagged on a jagged outcrop, ripping with a sharp tear. At last, I burst into a small side passage where the torrent's force softened and a pool of still water beckoned. I collapsed onto sand warmed slightly by residual daylight, gasping for air. Above me, distant echoes of thunder receded as the storm moved east. My clothes clung to my skin like a second skin. Crimson scratches marked my arms from rough stone. Though battered and exhausted, I had escaped the canyon's deadliest snare. In the hush that followed, I dared to hope I might live to tell this tale. As the first pale fingers of dawn crept over the canyon rim, Salim's voice echoed faintly, a promise of salvation that felt like a lifeline. He had circled the gorge, risking his own safety in search of me. Gently, he lowered a sturdy rope into the alcove's mouth, his lantern swinging in rhythmic arcs. I tied the rope around my waist, muscles trembling with relief as I inched toward the opening. When I emerged, Salim pulled me into a tight embrace, his face unwinding from worry into cautious relief. For a long moment, we simply held on, two souls bound by the 6 trials, as the world outside shifted from night's palette of indigo to the warm glow of sunrise. By the ranger station at Wadi Musa, Salim wrapped me in a woolen blanket and offered sweet mint tea brewed over his embers. The warmth seeped through my bones as we sat on weathered stone steps, watching tourists trickle in for Petra's morning tour, oblivious to the night's drama. I sipped the fragrant brew and nibbled on fresh flatbread Salim had carried, tasting life itself renewed. Though exhaustion weighed heavily, gratitude buoyed my spirit. The Sikh had tested me, but I had learned its secrets and survived. As Salim guided me back toward Khazneh's ornate façade, I knew this story would be more than a mere photograph. It would be a testament to human resilience. Sitting beneath the rose-hued façade of Khazneh, I reflected on how the Nabateans carved this marvel from living rock, engineering water channels still in use 2 millennia later. Their quiet mastery of nature's forces contrasted sharply with my harrowing encounter, where a fleeting storm turned stone corridors into raging rivers. The Psyche's ancient wisdom, rooted in respect for water and terrain, offers a lesson. We can shape our world, but never master it completely. In every grain of sandstone, there is a story waiting to be unearthed. Modern travelers chasing Instagram moments may miss life's unpredictable poetry if they don't pause to listen. To the wind in the canyon, the echoes of history, and the whispered warnings of desert storms. This journey reminded me that travel's true thrill lies not just in discovery, but in the humility we gain when nature reminds us of our fragile place within it. Thanks for joining me on this journey through Petra's hidden heart. If you felt the rush of sand beneath your feet and heard the roar of ancient water channels, imagine what's next. Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a pulse-pounding adventure. Have your own near miss in a far-flung place? Drop it in the comments. I might turn your story into the next episode.